Hey, welcome back to What's Brewing with Joe Sixpack. I'm Glen Macnow. We are at Tasker's Beer Barn in Exeter. They got more than 500 great craft beers in here, as long as some of the, regular day-to-day beers. So, we told you last week about our great contest we were doing this year. It's a What's Brewing scavenger hunt. We asked you last week to just get a picture of a t-shirt of a brewery. You can still send that to any of our social media accounts. This week, we are asking you to get us a picture of you with a brewer, Joe Sixpack?
A brewer? I mean, who hasn't gone to a brewer and didn't get that picture with the brewer? But we have a little twist on it, okay?
Yes.
So you're gonna get points for it, but we're gonna give you 10 extra points, let's say, 10 extra points.
You just made that up.
Yes, I did. If the photograph is of a brewer without a beard.
Does such a thing exist?
Well, yes, there are.
Oh,
there
okay.
are out there.
Well,
We're going to talk about that in a second.
All right, so, that's right. Take a picture of you with a brewer, preferably without a beard. Send it to any of my social media, at Real Glen Macnow on Twitter, Glen Macnow on Facebook, at Real Glen Macnow Instagram. Send it to the show, What's Brewing PA, on various social media. Joe Sixpack, you are on Twitter as?
Beer_radar.
There you go. Should be a lot of fun. All right, special guest this week while we are at Tasker's. Nurin is the author of A Woman's Place. Give me the book. Where's the book? There it is.
Here we go. A Woman's
Place in the Brew House, A Forgotten History of Alewives Brewsters. Brewsters?
Yes.
Witches.
I'll talk about that.
Okay, witches and CEOs.
It's a great idea for a book. This has been an issue that's been coming up a lot in the world of beer. But Taryn, welcome to What's Brewing.
Thanks.
And with all our guests, we want you to bring us beer because we don't get enough of it, obviously. And you did bring us a beer. This is Brave Noise Pale Ale from Winding Path Brewing. I'm going to pour it. Tell us about this beer.
All right. Well, Brave Noise is an international collaboration brew. We've been seeing a lot of those over the past few years. Usually it's for some sort of charity. Brave Noise is a beer that has been spearheaded by a woman named Brienne Allen, who is better known as Rat Magnet on Instagram, because she's the one who really made this, salud.
Hey, everybody.
Cheers.
Made the Me Too reckoning happen in craft beer last May.
Good.
So this particular rendition of Brave Noise was brewed by a fabulous brewer named Irina Wise at Winding Path Brewing, which is part of Windridge Farms, outside Gettysburg.
We've had the Winding Path beers on the show in the past. We're going to get a little bit into Brienne and the Me Too controversy, I guess I could call it.
By the way, let me just say, I like this. Crisp, seems fairly sessionable, kind of low alcohol.
It's a pale ale. It's, I believe, 4.5%. So
okay.
it's a good,
nice.
easy
good everyday
drinking
kind of beer.
Very nice beer.
Yeah.
But let's get to the point of your book first, which is about women in beer. Beer is often thought, and for a lot of different reasons, as it's a guy thing. We think of, like I pointed out, the brewers with the beards, and the whole notion of a male-oriented thing. We've had the advertising that's skewed towards men. But your book says that there's a history of women in brewing that maybe many of us don't know about.
Right, so the fact that beer is considered a man's drink is a very modern phenomenon, because starting from, I say about 200,000 years ago, give or take about 100,000 years, there's some discrepancy of opinion, but really once humans started walking on two legs, we started walking out of southern Africa, and that's when we became hunter-gatherers. And as the Penn Museum's illustrious Dr. Pat McGovern, who your viewers might recognize from doing the Ancient Ales series with Dogfish Head, he's fond of saying, while the men were out hunting mastodon, the women were back at the camp in the village, tending to the fire, the children, and brewing the beer. It's crazy to me that people don't know this. Beer's been the staple beverage of families for thousands of years.
Forever.
And so, who hangs out toiling in the kitchen, making food, making the beverages? It's the women. So, for instance, two colonial women I learned about who are of local interest, I learned about through reading Rich Wagner's book about the history of beer in Philadelphia. And to be honest with you both, I was completely horrified that I've never even heard of these two women.
So tell us, our viewers, who are these women?
So these women, one is Mary Lyle.
Mary Lyle.
She inherited her father's brewery in Old City in colonial times. And then over on the other side of the river, we have Elizabeth Haddon, who actually founded Haddonfield.
Yeah.
She was a brewer, maybe even a distiller, and her brewery still exists. It's on private property, but I snuck back there once, and they were gracious enough to let me crawl around.
So we had women as brewers in history, ancient times, and right up into the colonial times. What happened where men became the leading people in the brewing industry?
Right. So what we see that happened here in the United States to make Americans think of beer as a man's beverage has happened over and over and over throughout time and space. And that's this. Remember, we talked a couple minutes ago saying that it was women who would be doing the brewing, the household chores. Well, at some point in every single civilization that has brewed beer, and it's a lot of them, at some point, either economics, it was usually economics, and or politics and or religion, those forces came in and replaced women who were doing this as like a cottage industry. Maybe, they'd be brewing a little for their families. If they had any extra to sell, they'd sell it and make a couple pennies. When it looked like it was going to be profitable, or maybe capitalism was forming, or maybe the church, started to get threatened by women who had some independence and maybe spoke out and a little bit of money. Nope, gotta shut that down.
Wow. So men, big-footed women, because it was going to make a lot of money for them at some point. Your book goes into detail about this. Women's place is in the brew house. I know you were working on this for quite a while as a researcher, but this past summer we saw a flap over women in beer. So that couldn't have been better timed as a writer, maybe not for the women themselves,
right.
But this involved the woman that made this beer. Tell us a little bit about what happened this past summer with sort of in the whole Me Too era of beer.
Sure. Well, Me Too came very late to craft beer, and it might not have even happened without the encouragement. Well, it was sort of an accident, but the woman I mentioned before, Brianne Allen, she was a production manager at Notch Brewing in Salem, Massachusetts, and a contractor who was helping build out a new outpost for them, I think, was barking at her and asking her all kinds of stupid questions that we've been hearing, as we've been covering the industry. You drink beer? You like beer?
Oh, jeez.
And she got sick of it, and she made a video and posted it.
Just being patronized.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
She got on Instagram, made a video, and said, "Roof, I just got barked at. What are your stories of sexism?" Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Well, the stories started coming into her privately, and she reposted them. A lot of them are anonymous. They started, kind of milder, and then it picked up momentum, and there are thousands of stories that have come out now, finally, from around the world.
Some of them being very serious, some of them being kind of, I don't want to say trivial, but small, but patronizing. That I work this job, I deserve equal treatment, but some of them being much more serious than that. And it really did spark. Well, I'll ask you, what did it spark? What was the outtake?
One of the most gratifying conversations I've had related to this was a friend of mine who owns a brewery in Bucks County, a white guy who's got a great heart, and he said, "Tara, I had no idea that it was this bad." And I hear that a lot, even from women. I'm not surprised at the content, but I'm surprised at the frequency. So the most important thing it's done, I think, first of all, is started the conversation. Because for this entire time, it's been happening, but women would only whisper about it, and only with like super trusted friends, because what happens is too often, if a woman comes out and accuses, say, a boss or somebody or a colleague of sexual harassment or worse, it goes public, especially if she files a lawsuit, and then she might not get a job again.
Yeah.
Right. So you're a writer, so you're not necessarily in the beer industry itself, although I do know you're very much involved with Pink Boots, which we've talked a lot about on this show. Where would you like to see this go? Because so often we see these controversies, they pop up and then they just disappear, have a limited shelf life. Where do you think this should go?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I'm seeing alarming numbers of women leave the industry.
Oh, that's bad.
Just flat out, I am sick of this.
That's the worst.
Done.
All right, that's the worst result.
So I would like to stem that. First of all, I'm starting to work on a project actually that involves transcendental meditation, which I'm told Tom Brady is a big advocate for.
Thanks for bringing him on the show. We really, yeah.
I was like, I gotta think of something in sports, and I forgot about that until right now, so I'm patting myself on the back. Bringing transcendental meditation as a healing technique for some of these victims. That's just one thing. There are other prominent people in the industry who are getting together, working with organizations like Safe Bars, for instance, which works to train front of house bar workers to recognize signs that somebody might be in trouble.
Right, because a lot of this is, I mean, we talk about it in the industry, it comes from the people working in it, but a lot of it comes from the public, the people in the bars who come and harass bartenders and so on.
Yeah, it's really awful. Another thing that I would like to see is bar and brewery owners not being afraid to kick out patrons who are acting inappropriate.
Yeah.
I can shout out Erin Wallace, owner of Devil's Den, who has said that for a long time. I mean, she kicks out one patron and she loses one patron, but maybe 5 other patrons see that happen and appreciate that and then continue to come back. So, I mean, there are a million different ways that this could go for the positive. I definitely think the timing of Me Too happening a year after the racial reckoning of George Floyd creates a really nice symbiotic relationship where we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion for everybody in the industry. And how do you do that? You incorporate HR policies, even for breweries that are very small. There's some outsourcing inexpensively that they can do. And I think ultimately it will be the implementation of HR, and it's not a sexy topic, but it's a really important one. And if we're working on HR for women, we can also, it's like my favorite expression, a rising tide raises all ships, right? So you make it better for women, you make it better for African Americans, etc. And white guys.
Inclusiveness is good for everybody. Let's hold up the book, A Woman's Place in the Brewhouse, Tara Nurin. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything, and thank you. Let me have that good beer. Thank you. Thank you for this. Brave Noise, good name, Pale Ale, Winding Path Brewing Company was involved. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back. We're going to talk to Tom Tasker, owns this here joint, next on What's Brewing.